Hey,
Hey, hey, hey.
hey,
Okay. Welcome, welcome.
welcome indeed. Welcome, my friend, and our friends out there.
Awesome. So I'm pumped to have this chat and start this little project endeavor with you. So get into it.
Likewise, likewise. Introductions. First episode of the current working title we're running with is the Godfathers, and I keep wanting to say the Dogfathers, but we're going to keep it the Godfathers. Evolution of the father role. Evolution of the father role. The intention being to talk about fatherhood, to talk about the archetype of the father, to talk about how the role of the father, where it is in the context of culture and society and family, what it brings, what is a healthy version, what's in the shadows. Both of us are fathers. I have a son, a 12-year-old. And James, I'll handball it to you in a second. I am a psychotherapist, a spiritual mentor, and a healer, and a writer. And one of the really big things that I found in my own personal journey, but also in my work, is the importance of the father role, the archetype of the father, the blueprint of the father consciousness, and what that brings to us personally, and the necessity of it, the importance of it for society in general, how there is such a big gap in terms of what the father can and must feel more than at any time previous to this era. So without going into further more into it, and I'm happy for you to ask me questions about anything around that, James, I'll handball it to you for your own introduction.
I'll leave a question still do the introduction and then I'll fire off.
Yeah.
So I'm James. I've got th three kids, 8, 6, and 3. To think about that one. Two daughters and
Mhm.
a son. Very much thrusted into fatherhood. Like Igor, I also believe that the father archetype is I reckon it's one of the most important roles here on Earth. And I feel like it is a blessing, not a sacrifice, even though it is often felt as a sacrifice as we go along. And right now is, in with what's occurring in the collective, there's a lot of trying to dismantle the father or separate the father or trying to push the father into exile rather than bring the father in to as the leader or as the main structure to start to lead the collective in the places that are most good and true. So I was super pumped when you brought this to me, as it was like I shared before, having a lot of purpose energy around father percolating in me, and as a stay-at-home father, and also psychotherapist and rebirthing breathwork facilitator, writer like yourself, constantly having these little insights and realizations and just these little if only all dads were doing this, or if all fathers were allowed to do this or honored to do this and respected to be this. I was pumped at the idea that we got to open up a channel or the space, a space for fathers to evolve and loving their name so far. But I'll throw a question back at you. And why do you believe right now? So two questions: that fathers are being pushed into exile, and two, why is it important for fathers to be in a place of spiritual authority
Mm.
or authority?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer to the first questions is almost implied in the second question, and that is one dimensionality to the answer to this. If the father holds authority within the family and that energy gets displaced, shunned, pushed into the shadows, the authority has to be somewhere now. And if not for the father, then the powers that be stand in the position of authority. All of a sudden, the tribe, the community, the family, the populace is looking for authority not towards the father, but towards the governing powers who potentially want to hold sway or control over the populace. So from that kind of, you could say, conspiratorial perspective, which I feel like there is truth to, there is a negative connotation around the father in order to exile the sacred sense of authority, which is divinely ordained through the role of the father. Now, when we're talking about authority, we're not talking about patriarchal authority within the family, where the father will use his power, his dominance or authority to repress the family. It's the benevolent authority to create structure, as you were saying before, lead, to support, to protect, to create boundaries in order to keep safe. For that, you need authority. If there's no trust in authority and he's in that fatherly energy of structure, then that is when we end up with chaos. And that's when chaos or those in the energy of chaos look for some kind of containment, some kind of boundary, some kind of authority, structure, rules, governance, and therefore look for other authority figures outside of the family system. So that's the short and the long of it, that there is, in my opinion, in my channeling and my intuition, in my seeing, the way the father's portrayed, and that this isn't just a kind of airy-fairy conspiracy. If we look at film, for example, look at the roles of the father being portrayed in the films. It's usually either the patriarchal, abusive, repressive, alcoholic, violent father, the Darth Vader kind of character archetype. Or we have, especially in the last, I don't know how many years, maybe 20 or so odd years, there's been this introduction of this goofy father, the father that everybody laughs at. He makes jokes, he makes dad jokes, but nobody takes him seriously. He's kind of passive, he's laid back, he's an afterthought. And excuse me, my cat's trying to clamber up. So you have these kind of very unhealthy role models being portrayed in the public sphere. And of course, that adds to the collective type of narrative around the father figure. So, add that on top of the whole anti-patriarchal thing, where in the attempt to dismantle the patriarchy, what's happened is it's thrown the baby out with the bathwater, not only the patriarchy, but the father along with that, and the masculine, if we want to go there, and the masculine, the men to be afraid of, to not to be protected by, but the masculine, white, grown, mature man is a threat and a danger. So the cultural narrative, while attempting to remedy this energy of patriarchy and repression and subjugation, has in fact taken it. Now, whether that's happened intentionally or as a thing of ignorance, where it wasn't intended to, but that's actually what's happened. That's a debate perhaps to have, and maybe it doesn't really matter. The point is, to the point of your question, is that the father isn't something that is reverently held in a lot of cultural context, especially I'm going to say in the Western Anglo-Saxon cultural context, because, for example, where I come from, and I can see that in Asian cultures, I can see that in European cultures, the father is still held a lot more reverently. So there's a cultural layer to this as well, I would say. That's a very long-winded kind of meandering through that answer, but yeah, there you go.
To agree there, where the cultural beliefs and assumptions play a huge part, and it's almost like this sort of virus has infiltrated into the psyche of the collective, like you said, throwing the bath out with the bath water sort of thing is,
The
you
baby
know,
out with the bathwater, but
the
we could
baby
throw
with the
out the
bath,
bathwater with the bath as well. Yeah.
just throw out the whole fucking bathroom with the
Fuck
baby.
that.
Um,
Who needs a bath?
and it is the bath.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, yeah, you got like the Homer Simpsons and the Peter Griffins, and as well as you've got like the Darth Vaders and all like these different representations of what masculine means that have been infiltrated and seeped in. Then you've got like the Disney stuff as well, the prince and the princesses, and the tyrannical king. And then from there, oh, sorry, my daughter just came to the door.
Okay.
Not sure why.
Mm-hmm.
Hello? Lost my train of thought there. So what I was trying to get at was with the cultural, what you said there culturally is, because I'm obviously Scottish, and something that I realized when I came back was that's something that I noticed that was still revered. Except there was one thing that I did notice was, there's a lot less sort of stoic, Braveheart type of men that I could see, and I sort of like had a joke with my cousin because he's quite jacked. I was like, mate, where are all the Jack Bravehearts like yourself? What happened? The last time I came over here, it
Mm-hmm.
was, a lot of Jack Scots. And he's like, oh, man, I don't know. Everyone's going soft. And it's kind of got me thinking, there's a lot of, nice guy syndrome going on and around there, which would also plays out into relationships, and where the women become the pants wearers, or
Mm-hmm.
the dominant force in the relationship. And I can relate to that. It's taken me a lot of having to wrangle my beautiful wife, almost like a bull. She's an Aries, double Aries, so sometimes it's like wrangling a bull, to stand in that place of authority to lead us. And I feel like this is a common theme in a lot of relationships where it, and my wife has worked through this, and we've had a lot of dialogue around her own generational wounding from her mother's line of, men aren't safe, men can't be trusted, men dominate, men control, men XYZ. There's many more. I'm going to go into more of the abusive ones. But I think that plays a really big part in this whole conundrum that we're in. And what I wanted to kind of like pass over to you, Igor, is, men, when they are dominating from a spiritual, energetic space, I would go to say have their inner feminine integrated. And from that place, it's like we can't always be for women, or just having to be. I guess what I'm trying to say is like the whole narrative of men need to be safe, and that being projected onto us. I feel like there's some sort of myth in that. I'm not saying that obviously we need to be safe, but there's a level of, I feel, projection coming onto men and fathers where it's almost like the wounding of the female. Because I know I've seen a lot of fathers that they're nothing but safe, but they're getting told that they're not safe because of being human, you know. And it's not that they're being abusive, or it's not that they're doing anything severely wrong or bad. They're just being human and getting frustrated, and it's having an expression, but it's not at, say, wife, child, or other. But then that's getting deemed as patriarchal or bad or wrong, which then leads to further separation. So I feel like this is like for me personally, not that I've experienced this, it's something that I've worked through with other men, where it's almost like there's just some stuff getting projected on, and then men are sort of standing there going, fuck, am I unsafe? So then they soften further, they step more further out of authority because they don't want to lose connection with the other or child. There's like a fear there because of what you could see happens to some men who lose their child. They don't get to see the child. And then there's don't have to go the whole court system stuff. But, and I think that this is a major issue happening right now for a lot of men. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a layer of demonization of men and fathers within relationships, within families. You touched on a point there that I think deserves a bit more extrapolation, and that is this idea of needing to be safe as a father and having a human reaction like frustration or anger that can come up and then being deemed, oh, you're the unsafe father. So I think what's important to separate here is our humanity, this layer of we're humans, and these deeper roles, these sacred roles, I want to call them, like the father, the mother, etc., etc. The thing is, we're both, right? We're both. We're both a human being, and we embody different roles in different contexts. We're human everywhere. Whereas we may change roles in the family. We might be a father somewhere else work. We might be a colleague, or we might be a mentee of a mentor. So we're not in a father role in that situation, but we're still a human there as well. So it's important not to conflate the two. It's important to recognize the multidimensionality of every person. So when somebody has a human response or a reaction, like a frustration, like an anger, in connection and family, let's say a father, it's important to recognize that doesn't necessarily mean, oh, the masculine's unsafe, or the father is in fact patriarchal, and so we must dismantle that. It's important to recognize that, oh, well, this really that, or is it's a human being also just having a rough day or a response because they can't get their needs met or serve us in a certain way and we're dissatisfied with it. It's important to hold a deeper understanding, a framework that can bring forgiveness and acceptance for someone that's human and in a specific role, trying to fulfill a certain specific role. So I think a lot of the problems that are out there that you're mentioning, touching upon, are to do with conflation of these different dimensionalities of consciousness into the same thing. So then all of a sudden, psychology terminology now is using things like narcissist, right? So that's becoming really popular. And now every man, and sometimes women, are narcissists in the conversations. First of all, we all have narcissism. It's part of the human condition. Narcissism is a separation between myself and someone else, and I have my needs, and I'm going to fight to self-preserve that. That's a form of narcissism. So we all have that. So to recognize that as, okay, that doesn't define who the person is. That's a characteristic that I'm seeing in that person. It doesn't take away from the fact that there might be a mother or a woman or a father and a man. So there are these different dimensionalities of consciousness, which I see sometimes being conflated and at war with one another in connection and relationships. Since we're touching into that theme, what I did want to talk about today actually is archetypes. Because we're all human, and yet we play these roles. We play these roles which we tap into when we become a father, when we become a mother. Before that, we don't, for example, have that energy, that construct, that understanding of what it means to be that. Archetypes are these deeply held energetic imprints within the consciousness, our consciousness, within our soul, that become activated when certain circumstances come together. And so I have a child, that becomes activated in me. It's in the collective unconscious of the human nature that before me there was a father, before me there was a father, before me there was a father. And so that father becomes activated in me, that blueprint. That's what we call an archetype. And while there are these understandings out there around the masculine archetypes of the warrior, the lover, the magician, and who am I missing? The warrior, the lover, the magician, and the king. The father is given the least amount of attention out there. And so in my journey, becoming who I am, while I worked with those archetypes and they're important, at a certain point, I really started to open up to the father archetype when I became a father, but more so in my work and the importance of this archetype. My theory is that because of his shunning, repression into the dungeons, the other archetypes have been more accessible, but that one was the hardest to kind of excavate. And as it's coming forward, what I'm actually realizing is that while the king is normally set on as the pinnacle of the archetypes, the center point, the axis mundi of the other archetypes, I actually see the father as being above that. I see the father as being the image of the divine, of God the Father. There's, of course, Goddess, the mother. There's also the God the Father, the image of that. There's lots of different angles to this, and we can go into the different qualities of what that means, of the sacred father, divine father, and what that gives to others and what it gives to self. But the reason I see that above the other archetypes, above the king, don't mean better. I mean simply it's the evolution of the masculine consciousness to its highest level. Is the king, let's look at it mythologically. The king is someone who sits on his throne in a kingdom and is, rules over his subjects. He creates order. He rules so that there is order. He creates laws, securities, but he's not necessarily invested in the subject's growth in and for themselves and for their lives. That's the father. The father fathers others. He doesn't necessarily just rule over them for the sake of ruling and creating order. That's a different kind of father. A man who embodies that in a family may create order, but he doesn't foster and cultivate growth in his children. The father brings something beyond that. And there's different aspects to this, to his benevolence, to what the father brings. But that is how I see that. He comes from a place of love and wanting to develop the children in the family. Now, that's true for others, but we're talking about the father for externally, the family. But to father one's own consciousness is the same thing, just on a spiritual level. We father our inner child. We father our emotions and our thoughts and our states. This is how we find self-mastery. This is how we're able to self-regulate. When we don't have the father consciousness within us, chaos can happen. Emotions, fluxes, thoughts. I can't keep my focus. The anxieties come, everything else. When the father consciousness is grounded there, it's able to hold the kingdom together, hold the children of consciousness together within the psyche. He's able to establish rules which are the best for the soul, right? The rules for the emotions, rules for the thoughts. Okay, we're not going into these emotions now. How are we able to do that? How are we able to control that? Some people can, some people can't. Why? And what I'm finding is it is that father consciousness. And so when we're at war with the father, when we are shutting him out, let's say I had that experience a few years ago when this started coming through, and I tuned in and I could tell that my family had also shunned and shut our father out. And he's there and was there, but energetically, spiritually, I could feel like this big fuck you to the father. No, that's a dark thing. That's repressive, let's rebel against that. And as a result, there was this inner rebel, and there's a lack of ownership of the father within the family system and within myself. So when we're at war with the father, bad things happen. We lack discipline, we lack responsibility over ourselves, over our life, over our experience, over the work and the projects we undertake. Anywhere where there's chaos in life, disorganization, dysregulation, dismantling, lack of structure, there's a lacking of father. The father brings it all together, holds it together for the benefit of oneself and others. So a lot of my work has been about helping people actually find their relationship to the father, both for men and women, both for men and women, and watching how much the resistance there is and how much fear, how much fuck you there is to the father. There's so much adolescent, I call it the adolescent consciousness. There's a lot of that, which is fuck you, authority, I'm strong. You know, it's like this sort of thing going on multiple levels
Can
as
I share
as
something
a
with that?
form of pseudo self-empowerment. Yeah, go ahead.
So what I'm seeing is you say that adolescent energy. So if you look at the king and the warrior and the magician and the lover, and then we have the father archetype, and it's almost like what I'm seeing is like the father. You got the adolescent energy, which is coming through from the child, and it's like if you look, this is how I'm seeing is the
Mm,
adolescent energy is trying to puppet the magician, the lover, the king, and the missing one anyway, and the warrior, and not quite fulfilling the outfits or the roles there, not bringing those into full potential. But then when we have the father archetype powering those other sub archetypes, is how I kind of see it now. Is we have a more succinct, more powerful system and kingdom in place because it's fueled by, like you said, sacred, godly energy. And I know for myself, with working with this framework or this sort of archetype and grounding the father, I know when you know that's not happening and this adolescent still trying to do its thing. Is you can really I see how much my own family unit falls apart and just
yeah.
what the fuck's happening right now. So when that father consciousness and archetype is grounded and here and also honored and respected, I think is the big one is just, especially in the dynamic with what I share, having a wife and in the
Mm,
house, it's like I
yeah.
really see that when she also is in that place of the queen and queen and mother, and that's sort of coming through, should yeah, mother archetype, it really you really see a powerful system in place and it flows, it works, there's yes, there might be a little bit of conflict here and there, but it's not, it always comes to a point of resolution and repair and love and connection. Whereas when you've got adolescent energy coming through, trying to play these other roles, it just falls into a heap. And I'd like to hear more about the you know adolescent consciousness coming in and why you think men who are fathers are unable to get into the father consciousness, or what do you think is stopping, what do you think stopping men from being able to reach that within themselves?
Well, I still think that it's a repression of the father role. Lots of men are stuck in the you hurt me or you abandoned me or you're not available or all this kind of wounded rhetorics. And on some level, it's true. It's happened in human history through the father consciousness. But there's a need to go beyond that to connect to the father hunger that is like burning at the depths of men, but also women and also society. We're just in need of leaders. We're in need of chiefs, and a chief is just a father on a bigger level, on a bigger scale. We need that energy, and so I think that part of the woundedness and the negative rhetoric, the damaging rhetoric against the father expresses itself in adolescent energy. Another aspect of that is when adolescents are adolescent and they don't get met with healthy masculine role modeling, and elders to initiate them into adult masculinity and into fatherhood, they turn they get angry or hurt and they turn against adult masculinity and adulthood. And it's like, where are you? Why didn't you show up? I was waiting for you. It's a resentment. There's a resentment there. There's rage there. There's hurt there. And so and because of the stuckness, I'm still an adolescent. Where the fuck are you, right? And so that adolescent energy sticks around. And what do adolescents do? They're still chasing things to try to prove their masculinity. They're still waiting for the confirmation from the father and the elder, right? They're still waiting for someone to look at them and go, yeah, hey, I see the man in you. Rise up. They're waiting for that reflection. They don't get it. So their psyche twists it in the way of how am I going to get that? How am I going to get the reflection of my masculinity? What does culture provide for that? Oh, lots of money. Oh, lots of women. Oh, fame. Oh, whatever, whatever, whatever. Right? Which
Love me, daddy, love me.
perpetuates the role, the negative role of men, which is, oh, they're just boys with toys, or men will always be men, or look, they're misogynists and patriarchs. Yeah, that's one angle to it. But that's, again, I'm going to argue that's demonization that lacks the depth and empathy for the hurt and the woundedness and where this came from. So we have to humanize these things. We have to humanize the patriarchy. We got to humanize control, all these sorts of things. But it all comes back to father, because it's the father that looks at the adolescent or the child and sees them, acknowledges them, honors them, reveres them, believes in them, welcomes them, supports them. And these are the things that are great to explore and talk about in our conversations. How does each one of these initiations look? How does it feel? How do we provide that as fathers? How do we bring that through to our children, to our boys and to our girls? And also what else does a father do internally and within society, within the family, not just individually with the boy and the girl? How are we doing for time, by the way? I just wanted to do time check,
In about half an hour. So
Half an hour? Okay, cool. Yeah.
I think it touching on a really important point there is, right now is what's being shoved down a lot of young boys' faces is exactly what you're talking to, is this sort of misogynistic, patriarchal, watches, women, cars, money, fame, influence, all those kinds of things. And, it just kind of, there's a lot of layers to it. You can even look at it, it's happening within spiritual communities as well, in some way, shape or form, just different clothing, different masks. And, it all really is the screaming out for the approval and the love and the respect from dad, from the father, which keeps the chasing occurring. And I know when I first was held in that father archetype, it was so powerful that it shifted me energetically into a place that it couldn't go back. I was like, oh fuck, right. That's what I've been missing. I was never going to find it anywhere else, because it was something that was internal that I needed to step into within myself. And once that occurred, it took a while to percolate and to assimilate into a place of groundedness, and still does today. There's still moments where you're flicking in and out. That's the journey of life. However, it's been this sort of experience, like you said, where we lack the eldership, or we lack the initiators or individuals that hold the sort of father consciousness in a way that's clean and that's pure and that is good and true. And so I want to, just before we finish up, I'm curious if you just want to touch on the sort of other kind of father, the tyrannical, or I feel like there's kind of like another kind of father trying to, almost, it's like a mimicry version of what we're talking about, right? And it's a bit more righteous. a bit more, I would guess we're going to say more traditional, that sort of traditional energy that's trying to come through at the moment, where it's not quite fitting because we're in a completely different cultural time to what it was, and it's, someone's trying to shove us a rectangle into a triangle square, but they're trying to jam it in. And I'm curious to know if you're also sensing a similar thing, or if you could speak to that, where there's that kind of trying to come in, which, and it's almost that it's almost there, but there's still some distortions that are leading some men astray.
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by trying to come in at the moment. What you're describing there sounds to me like something that has been around rather than trying to come in. So, do you want to speak more to what you're perceiving is trying to come in? Where are you seeing these blueprints trying to make their way in?
I would mostly see them online. It's the only
Yeah.
place I'm really seeing them. It's more like that tradition.
Do you mean like Tate type of stuff?
No, no, no. That's like Tate's more the misogynistic. That's the other
Right,
side. I'm more talking about
right,
I'm gonna go down like the Christian side, the
right,
biblical, really
right.
hardcore biblical Christian,
Mm, mm,
where and I think there's a lot of truth in it. Don't
mm,
get me wrong.
mm,
Don't bash me, anyone who's listening. There's a lot of truth, but I still think it's swayed in a certain direction or distorted
mm,
in a certain direction where
mhm,
it's still there's still something that's closed off to God, to
mm,
actually God,
mm,
because there's still something there that is it's if you're not doing this, you are sinning. It's almost like you're saying, it's like we need to honor the humanity in the others, that the world of the Tates or something, all that sort of energy. If there's still a level of, like you're saying, is like there's a hurt boy or hurt adolescent that's screaming out for see me, understand me.
Well, look, I mean, in my experience, for the father to come in, for the father consciousness to flourish, truly flourish, there's a level of non-distinction that then happens between self and God, the Father. In a way, you're channeling God, you're embodying God, you're becoming God's voice. So you're fathering those around you, not from your personal ego, but from this deeper source of wisdom that's coming through you, to which is benevolent for others. Anything that comes from ego is going to be self-serving, and of course it's going to happen. We're all human beings. But if one is plugged into that channel, then the role of the father, not the human being, but the role of the father, then the intentions trying to get through to the family and to self are from this pure intent. So what you're referring to, I'm not aware of, because I don't do I don't do any Instagramming, in fact, at all, or reels or anything like that. I follow very little stuff, but from what you're describing, righteousness is still a level of taking the God into the ego and going, oh, I know his commandments. I know what they are. It's not letting them come through live and in the moment and channeling his voice and really embodying that God energy, that God the Father energy. It's taking it for self. It's another little egoic trick to go, oh, no, 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 I know what this is. And I'm going to unconsciously act like God. So it seems like I'm doing it for others, but actually there's something self-serving within that, even if it's just a sense of power. Now I feel like I'm, the king upon the hill, because what I'm saying sounds wise and the people are listening or whatever, right? So in my experience of becoming what I'm talking about, this divine father role, I really had to die in some profound ways to open up to that. You got to be humbled so thoroughly
So partly.
in order to be able to receive, because with great power comes great responsibility, right? So it's like you have to be willing and ready to receive that sort of empowerment, because it's not going to be for you. It's going to be for your family, for your flock, for your community, for your consciousness, for the tribe, right? And only these sorts of fathers can truly rule. They're the ones who should be at the head of the tribe, the country, the nation. That's not to say women can't. Of course they can. But in terms of fathers and men we're talking about, these are the ones that are trustworthy because they're simply bringing through divine intelligence that is trying to bring order, authority, love, protection, boundaries, responsibility, caretaking, all that stuff, reassurance, belief, faith, that comes from that archetype, right? So it sounds to me like what you're describing, that there is, if you're picking up on that, and I do trust your intuition and your radar on this, that there is a sense of righteousness. Now, interestingly though, as I say, every egoic manifestation has an impulse, a pure impulse of the soul. That's why it's sometimes hard to go, well, that sounds really true, but something's off. I can't tell. And then some people really buy into it. They're similar. So when we come back to connect the dots of why I'm saying this, righteousness comes from ego. But to be compelled by the divine, to channel it through cleanly, sounds freaking confident, almost like righteousness.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
But there's a huge difference energetically. One is for self, one is like aggrandizing. It's, whoa, look at me. The other one is saying that with the confidence of the divine for the other, to serve the others. And there is a confidence in it but it's not cocky, it's not arrogant, it simply is what it is. So, when we listen to teachers and influencers or whoever, or our fathers in the family, to be able to really attune to the benevolence or to the humanity that's just being caught up in it and is self-serving, I think is a very important skill to foster and to develop.
Totally agree. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head there with the ego righteousness or the self-serving, or just the sort of intellectualizing the commandments and all intellectualizing what it means to be a father, rather than embodying the father consciousness and allow it to confidently live through us.
Yep.
So I won't talk too much on that. I think we should leave it there. I think that was a very potent little chat, and something that dropped in as well, just as we were chatting. Maybe the next chat we do in this podcast series, is we could speak to the mother archetype and the importance of this as a father, as I do feel like it is very interrelated, if not, or it is interrelated, interconnected.
Sounds good.
I think that would be a good next step to go. I'm sure there'll be some mothers or women listening to this as well. So
sounds good.
Yeah.
Great. Well,
fantastic.
Thanks so much for the questions and the prompts and the conversation, James. You got a lot of fathering to do tonight and every day forth, and so do I when I get my child. Well, till next time, my dear godfather.
Godfather. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. Catch you on the next one.